Welcome back to another Real Answers to Fake Questions episode. Once again, we are still the longest running Real Answers to Fake Questions series on YouTube. So just by watching, you are making history. So let's get right to the very first question. It is from Fran Audio. Writes, what piece of gear do you wish you could leave home but can't survive without? Before I even give that answer, I'll say when I was starting to get back into backpacking and getting rid of a lot of my older, heavier gear and going more lightweight, I was aiming for that magical 5-pound base weight. And when I was looking around, watching the million YouTubes of other people with 5-pound base weights, they all were carrying tarps. And that just doesn't work for me. And the thing that I wish I could leave home is my bug net, or the tent with the integrated bug net. I wish I can just go out there with one of those lightweight tarps like a lot of people have and just sleep where the air is, the wind and the breeze is coming through. But where I live, if you went out without a bug net, you'd also have to bring extra blood for a transfusion in the morning. And I just think if you are also looking at all those videos out there and everybody has this expensive lightweight stuff from different parts of the country and you're like, oh, I could never do that, it might be because you can't. A lot of the gear is so specific to area of the country. Again, even one of those smaller minimalist tarps, I could never see myself using one of those around here. I don't know if I want to be 5 days sleeping in the rain with a tarp that is that small. And again, you can bring a bivvy and you can do other things. But I wish I can go just with a very simple tarp, and I lived in that section of the country where I can get away with that. Probably this time of year I could, but for most of the time when I actually go overnight, without a bug net, I'd be a lot lighter in the morning. Question number 2. This is from Steve Wasser. What do you think of that new Slate article on not having to filter your water? If you are not familiar with that article, I think it was published last week, maybe at the beginning of the week. I'll leave a link to it in the description for this video. It basically said that backpackers are wasting their time filtering their water, that Giardia is just not that big of a deal, and you can skip filtering the water. And I know I saw a comment from one backpacker saying, oh, great, that new Slate article is going to lead to so many more sicknesses and et cetera, et cetera. I know I've drank water that was unfiltered, not a lot, and most of it was in like the Rocky Mountains where you can drink it dripping off of the glacier. And I've always wanted to experiment because I've always met people. I've seen obviously videos on YouTube where someone under their breath goes, I never actually filter my water. And I've started reading a lot of other research, and granted, I did not read the whole research, stuck mostly to the abstracts and summaries, but it seems like a lot of times what gets blamed on water actually is just bad hiker hygiene, and you're giving it to yourself, or they're giving it to themselves as they go through the hike. So I'm thinking about this summer, maybe just running down to the hardware store and just getting a tube and experimenting, just sticking that thing into the river and just using it like a giant straw with no filter. I don't know. I also always thought about this as a parent. I have 2 daughters, and I always thought about this as they were growing up. As a backpacker, all water can potentially be dangerous. You should filter everything. But then whenever I was out with them, they could not pass a water source, river, lake, stream, without getting their heads into it and dunking in and swimming. And there's no way they exited those bodies of water without consuming some. And they were in all sorts of rivers, lakes, and streams all over the place. And I always thought to myself, why aren't they getting Giardia? If it's so bad and it's so prevalent and I have to filter everything, here are these kids where you can see the water squirting out of their mouth. They're drinking it as little kids, and it's in their mouth, they're taking in some of it. Why aren't they getting Giardia? And I have to be so fearful. So I don't know, I think the article is worth a read. I also think going through and doing some of your own research is worth it. It's really interesting stuff that's out there. So at this point, what do I think of it? I might give it a test this summer. Maybe not when I'm low, but anything that's up at elevation, I think I might just drink straight from that stream and we'll see what happens. All right, we are on the last question, question number 3. This is from Seymour Bison. What was your scariest moment on a backpacking trip? Without a doubt, one of my favorite memories was also my scariest at the time. Although every year that passed, it seems like it gets romanticized and it becomes a little less scary. I was in North Dakota, Theodore Roosevelt National Park, and I was with a group of kids that I was leading on a trip, and my co-leader woke up about, 4 o'clock or so to go to the bathroom, and when he returned, he said, "Paul, there's a herd of buffalo out there." So I looked up, and sure enough, just ever so tiny dots on the horizon, you can see the whole herd. And I said to him, like, "Dan, we've seen buffalo before." He's like, "Paul, there's a lot this time." So I was like, "All right, if they get to a certain point, wake me up." So sure enough, they got to a certain point, and we both got up and we watched them a little longer. And then I was like, "All right, Dan, if they get to this point, we have to wake up everybody." So eventually we woke up the kids. It was a small group. We had like 8 kids with us. And I was like, "All right, guys, if it gets to this point, everybody's boots are on." But here was the problem. We were at the edge of a plateau, and the buffalo were filling in the whole space coming towards our little point. And the only exit we had was over the edge. So eventually they got to a point where we were like, "All right, over the edge." And we went over the edge of the plateau and like dug in with our boots, and it was like a cartoon. In my memory, we were like hanging on roots and vines and digging little footholds in, and it was pretty close to that. And what felt like an hour was probably just 20 minutes. But eventually I crawled back up and peeked over the top, and about 3 feet away was the male bison face to face with me. So I jumped back down, waited a little while longer, and sure enough, they were all walking away. But they had walked all over our stuff, all around where we were camping, and that probably goes down as my scariest moment at the time, and definitely one of my most memorable moments while backpacking. So this is yet another episode of Real Answers to Fake Questions. Hope you enjoyed them. I think I might skip next week. It's really hard to take in all of these fake questions and determine which ones are real and which ones are fake. So I might skip next week and maybe do the week after that. If you happen to have any real questions, feel free to throw them down. And again, that Slate article that I mentioned in question 2, I think it's worth your time to read and think about. And I will leave the link to that in the description. And enjoy that, and enjoy your next day out in the woods. All right, see you next time.